They say that nothing good happens in a bar after 2 a.m., especially in New Orleans during Mardi Gras. But this one time, something did. About 7 years ago, I ran into a friend after I had ridden in a Mardi Gras parade. And we were getting this late night jambalaya at this place called F&M's Patio Bar in uptown New Orleans. And he asked me if I wanted to speak to his business group in Dallas in a few months. And of course I was like, yeah. Then, a few months went by and I had to, I was like, I gotta speak to these business leaders about something for an hour. And these are like really astute men and women. They will call BS if I'm just winging it. And I'm great at winging it on stage. So I was like, whoa, it's things like collaboration, it's filling the well, always like exposing myself to new music and knowing the business of my business and changing my attitude, how I've learned. And I've studied my peers, people who are more successful than me, like what do they do? What does Max Martin do consistently? What does Pharrell do? What does Ryan Tedder do? And then business people. And I saw all these parallels. So I really just the speech started as like, okay, I'm gonna start with my life. How Better Than Ezra took off, how we got dropped, and then how I was kind of forced to kind of reinvent myself. Because I always wrote songs myself in Better Than Ezra. Those first 3 albums, it was just me. And then suddenly I was dropped and I was like, okay, my ego said, screw them. I'm gonna keep doing what I was doing. But my dad always told me, nothing changes if nothing changes. So I realized, I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this, but I'm gonna do something different. And that's when I started collaborating. The first collaboration was with Meat Loaf. I was at Conway Studios in Los Angeles. It's an amazing studio right in the heart of Hollywood at St. Andrews in Melrose. And Justin Timberlake was making his first album. Better Than Ezra was making our 5th album, an album called Closer. We were mixing with Brad Wood, who'd worked with Liz Phair and Smashing Pumpkins. And in the 3rd studio was Meat Loaf. And one morning, Meat Loaf heard one of my songs, a song called Closer. His manager, a guy named Alan Kovac, who manages Motley Crue, Blondie, Barry Gibb, asked me if I would be interested in writing a song with Meat Loaf. And initially I was like, I don't know, because if you've never collaborated and you've always been just an army of one, the advantage of it is, when you come up with a song, to trust it, because it's gone through that internal litmus test and that internal sieve. Like it checks all those boxes. Is it cool? Have I written about this before? Am I ripping myself off? So it's kind of a leap, when you write with someone for the first time. And I can see it when I work with artists and the manager says, hey man, this is the first co-write. You can tell they're not sure. They don't want to say that's good. And I was that way. But I wrote with Meat Loaf and we wrote this 7-minute long Jim Steinman-esque epic that became a hit for him. Google Testify Meat Loaf Sydney Stadium Boys Choir and sit back and ready yourself for 9 minutes of rock and roll excess. But that was the first co-write I ever had. And then I wrote with Blondie, wrote a single for her that did well, wrote a song with Barry Gibb that was terrible, but I got to hang out with Barry Gibb, which was amazing. But that really kind of started, so that's an example of like the speech. This is part of the speech it's not in the book, but when I do the speech and just the other things that I've learned from other writers in my life. And then I would play the hits I've written for other people throughout the speech, and at the end, whoever I'm speaking to, whether it's 30 or people or 3,000, we write a song together, and it's really kind of taken off. But I didn't want to write a memoir. There's so many great memoirs, and if I'm gonna read a memoir, I want it to be down and dirty. I mean, I want there to be dirt, like Tommy Lee level dirt, like Keith Richards level dirt. And I was like, I just don't have that kind of dirt. I've got some good dirt. But maybe a memoir, but I wanted this to be something different and like, oh no, I want this to be kind of a how-to manual for not only for songwriters, but for anybody who just wants to continue getting better and evolving and taking that skill set they have and like, hey man, this is what's worked for me, but not only me, but everybody, because there's just truths you find as you go through life. And these are 5 things just to stay creative, stay evolving, changing your attitude. Like, when you're in a write and you've hit like a block, different tools to jumpstart a session, things that work, leaving your comfort zone. And then, the most important thing is daring to be stupid, which is the smartest idea in the book is the chapter called Daring to Be Stupid. And it's just that that you'll never come up with anything truly groundbreaking unless you're prepared to fail. I'm stealing that quote, and I quote from a guy named Sir Kenneth Robinson. He's an educator who has one of the coolest TED Talks out there ever. But it's just like, the best songwriters I know, especially lyricists, are the ones that just they keep throwing ideas out. They have no filter, and like J.T. Harding is a great songwriter, and he's just a brilliant lyricist, and you have to create a songwriting session where everybody knows it's a safe zone, and that, big ideas, let's just go for something crazy, guys, and if it's, failure isn't stigmatized, and that's when you really get into awesome stuff. That said, I kind of put it in the story of this guy, Jake Stark, and it was really fun to write. And I knew I'd done something right when my wife read it and she had tears in her eyes. She was like, "Oh my God, I love it." She's biased, but she's also can be my harshest critic too. But it is fiction. The characters, the rights, his circumstances are different than mine. I read all the time. I read highbrow stuff, fiction, nonfiction. I'll get my Pulitzer Prize or Booker Prize winning book on, then I'm reading something trashy on the beach. But the one thing that connects them all, the glue, is that it's got to be a great story. And I had read those books like Who Moved My Cheese and Tuesdays with Morrie, and I'm like, oh, I really like this way. So I was like, I'll tell a story and that will draw people in. Make it a compelling story. Make it a story with heart and humor and silliness. And then, you put the message in, these 5 practices and these rules of each practice. And then also put it in the song. The book is divided up with the 5 parts of a song. 5 is a number that continually pops up. The 5 parts of a song. I should have done something about the senses, the 5 senses. But then there's the 6th sense, right? Anyhow, so a story, I like when I leave something, I'm like, I loved it, and then it's like makes the pill go down easier if it's a great story and you laugh and it's compelling and it's a narrative and you learn something and you didn't even realize you did it. One of the things that's so important, and it's the first step in the method, is creative collaboration, and it's really, surrounding yourself in a songwriting session, surrounding yourself with people that have a skill set that's different than your own. Like I'm like a top line person, I'm the melody mainly. If there's a strength I have, it's that, So then I love bringing in a great lyricist and a great producer. I do a lot of my own production, but I'm not a gifted producer, and there's so many out there. And then if I have someone who's also a top liner, I'll bring somebody who just comes in from a different genre or, is older than me or younger than me. But once they're there, it's really about not micromanaging and letting the song create the momentum and the direction and listening. So often in collaboration, everybody wants to get their idea out, but when I sit back and I'm like, wait a second, all these people are mad talented. If I just sit back and listen to the ideas, that's when we'll get great things. So when I took, and as I was writing the book, initially I didn't have any mention of Jake's personal life. I noticed in a lot of the business parables that I read, it was really cut and dried. It was about one message, which whatever business principle somebody wanted to get across. But I was like, it's missing the heart. I kind of looked at my own life that when I started co-writing and stuff and collaborating and learning how to be a good collaborator, because saying you're collaborating and doing it are 2 different things. As one of the characters in the book says, his name's Shane Sawyer, and I imagine him as the Sam Elliott of Nashville. He flies a Cessna 150. There's a great chapter in the book where they go up in the air and they almost die. But he says, my ego is not my amigo. And that's so true in collaboration, but also in life. And so when I was writing a chapter about how, as you see in the book, he gets exposed to these principles in these songwriting sessions, but then he goes home and he's practicing these things subtly at first with his wife and his son, and his life starts turning around. And that's really the biggest thing, is like, whoa, the way you can conduct yourself in songwriting or in business is also a great way to conduct yourself in life. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be a great partner in a relationship and a great partner in a collaboration. And that's kind of one of the main messages, and probably for me, like most personal you know, emotionally speaking.